Aber wir wollen so nicht ziehen, wenn wir Lobby vom CM.
I think it's like in the sea, yeah? Okay, so my ambassador.
Fragen das ja auch okay, aber sind wir da von also es gibt keine Good morning, how are you?
Good morning.
You are here?
So you don't have to again,
It's a bit hectic, but
it's lovely now. It looks smaller.
yeah, I haven't seen it because when I came it was already closed.
It's fun actually. Could make up for, it's not going to make up for the one fair down here. So the Irish voice.
And nobody is still not like the other maybe.
No, it's very much fun. Yeah. We try to find out.
No, it's good. I had to see last week.
Yeah. Low pressure. But we're meeting them later, so maybe we can quantity like that.
So I went to it. Yeah. Good. Well, yeah, but the elections will take long, and then we come for the results. I don't observe the election.
But the results, I think.
Yeah, by 1 and 7, no? Something like that. By 1 o'clock, Berlin, ja. Also es ist das Gratulationsschreiben.
Dear colleagues, please be seated. I declare the third part session of the 20 and 24 ordinary session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe open. Madam Secretary General, Deputy Secretary General, Madam Secretary General of the Assembly, Ambassadors, members of the Assembly, I wish to welcome you all warmly to this third part session of our Assembly in 20 and 24. And finally, after being absent for 1 year, I'm particularly pleased to invite you back in our own hemicycle, which has been renovated and upgraded while we were meeting in the European Parliament across the river. I'm grateful to all those who worked hard on this renovation and from the results of whose efforts we will now benefit for a long time. Dear architects, workers, technicians, administrators, directors, and Director General of the Administration, all who made it possible for us to get back so quickly, thank you all very much. And many thanks also to the team of the Secretariat of the Assembly, led by our Secretary General of the Parliamentary Assembly, for accompanying very closely this work. As you may notice, dear colleagues, this hemicycle does not seem to change much, as all its historical architectural elements were preserved, but inside it has been considerably improved with extensive integration of new technologies and respect to the environment, as the old armchairs, for example, were renovated and not replaced as initially planned. In a way, this hemicycle is a reflection of what Europe is, a continent that embraces changes and innovation, while preserving its values and identity. I'm also very excited that our return to this hemicycle takes place during the session that offers particularly rich and politically important agenda. As you know, this week we will elect a new Secretary General, a person who will lead the Council of Europe in the next 5 years and oversee the implementation of the ambitious Reykjavik Declaration. We will debate a great number of hugely important and relevant reports, including on the legal and human rights consequences of the Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine, erasure of cultural identity in war and peace situation in Georgia, strengthening democracy through participatory and deliberative process, and many others. Today, we will award for the first time ever the Vigdis Prize for Women's Empowerment in the presence of the President of Iceland, Mr. Gudi Johannsson, and the Minister of Social Affairs and Labour Market of Iceland, Mr. Gudmundur Gudbrandsson. And this is just a glimpse of the very dense and interesting agenda. In a few minutes, we will hold a short ceremony dedicated to the 75th anniversary of the Council of Europe, which was formally marked in May this year, and I'm honored that the President of the National Council of Austria, Mr. Wolfgang Sobotka, will be taking part in it. I will continue my welcoming remarks at this beginning of the ceremony, but now I wish to pause to enable us to go through the first items on our agenda. I wish you all a productive and effective session. Let's go to work. The first item on the agenda is the examination of credentials of new members. The credentials have been submitted to the President in accordance with Rule 6 of the Rules of Procedure. The names of the representatives and substitutes are in document 16-012. If no credentials are challenged, the credentials will be ratified. Are any credentials challenged? So, no credentials are being challenged, so we can proceed. The next item in the agenda is changes in the membership of committees. The candidature for the general committees of the Assembly have been published as document committees, Commissions 2024-06. Are these proposals approved? Approved. So we're going now on to the request for current affairs debate or debate under urgent procedure. Before we examine the draft agenda, the Assembly needs to consider a request for debates under the urgent and current affairs procedure. The Bureau has received the following. Urgent procedure debate requested by political groups, challenges to democracy in Georgia. Current affairs debate requested by the United European Left Group. Can the Council of Europe step up its efforts to counter threats to the freedom of expression? Urgent procedure debate requested by more than 20 members. The urgent need to end the humanitarian disaster and the violations of international law in Rafah. Current affairs debate requested by political groups under the title War in Gaza, ensuring the release of the hostages, the implementation of an immediate ceasefire and the provision of humanitarian aid. At its meeting this morning, the Bureau decided to recommend to the Assembly to hold an urgent procedure debate on challenges to democracy in Georgia, a current affairs debate, can the Council of Europe step up its effort to counter threats to the freedom of expression, and the current affairs debate on war in Gaza, ensuring the release of the hostages, the implementation of an immediate ceasefire, and the provision of humanitarian aid during this part session. We will now consider the request for debate under the urgent procedure. Does the Assembly agree to the Bureau's recommendation to hold an urgent debate on the challenges to democracy in Georgia? Yes. Can you please use this next mic?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just regarding the urgent debates on the situation in Georgia, I would like to emphasize and stress your attention that most of you are aware that in 4 months period there will be parliamentary elections in Georgia at the end of October. Therefore, it's a very short time limit to the period, and country is in a pre-election period. Therefore, this debate can somehow interfere the situation, and therefore I would like to ask you just to remove the topic from the agenda. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Kozarenko.
Thank you, Mr. President, finally. Welcome everybody to our new hall. Dear colleagues, it's not up to our Assembly that Georgian government and Georgian parliament adopted the law which is against all the values of the Council of Europe just less than 6 months before election. So we can't not react on this. So I just want to ask all of us to support held in the debates on the situation in Georgia, because it's very, very dangerous for democracy in this very important country. Thank you.
So the chair of Georgian delegation already spoke against. Who wishes to speak? Mr. Kuzareko spoke in favor of holding this debate, and the Bureau and Committee of the Honoring of Obligation and Commitments by Member States of the Council of Europe are in favor of holding this debate. Does the chair of the committee, Mrs. Zanda Kalina Lukasevica, or a representative of the Bureau wish to speak? Zanda? So we shall now vote on the request for urgent procedure. The decision requires a 2/3 majority. Those who are in favor of holding this urgent procedure debate should vote yes. Those who are against holding such a debate should vote no. The vote is open. The vote is closed. I call for the results to be displayed. So we have the 2/3 majority. The request for urgent procedure is approved and referred to the Committee on the Honoring of Obligation and Commitments of Member States of the Council of Europe. It is proposed that the debate take place on the morning on Thursday, 27th June, as set out in the draft agenda. We now come to the second request for a debate under the urgent procedure on the urgent need to end the humanitarian disaster and the violation of international law in Rafah. At its meeting this morning, the Bureau agreed to recommend to the Assembly that this request be rejected in view of its support for the request for a current affairs debate on the war in Gaza. Is the Bureau recommendation accepted? The Bureau recommendation is accepted, and the request for an urgent procedure debate on this topic is therefore not approved. We now come to the request for current affairs debate. The Bureau was in favor of the request for a current affairs debate on: can the Council of Europe step up its efforts to counter threats to the freedom of expression? Does the Assembly agree to the recommendation of the Bureau that there should be a current affairs debate on this topic? Yes, the Bureau recommendation is accepted, and the request for a current affairs debate is therefore approved. It is proposed that the debate will take place on the afternoon of Thursday, 27th of June, as set out in the draft agenda. It will be opened by Mr. Andrei Hunko. We now come to the second request for a current affairs debate. The Bureau was in favor of the request for a current affairs debate on war in Gaza, ensuring the release of the hostages, the implementation of an immediate ceasefire, and the provision of humanitarian aid. Does the Assembly agree to the recommendation of the Bureau that there should be a current affairs debate on this topic? Agreed. The Bureau recommendation is accepted, and the request for a current affairs debate is therefore approved. It is proposed that the debate will take place on the afternoon of Thursday, 27th June, as set out in the draft agenda. It will be opened by Mr. Piero Fassino. The next item of business is the adoption of the agenda for the third part of the 20 and 24 ordinary session. The draft agenda submitted for the Assembly's approval was adopted by the Bureau this morning. Do we agree? Yes. It is agreed to. The minutes of the meeting of the Standing Committee in Vilnius on 24th May 2024 have been distributed as document 2024 PV02. I invite the Assembly to take note of these minutes. Are there any objections? No, it is agreed.
Yes.
So the next item on the agenda is the ceremony marking the 75th anniversary of the Council of Europe. Dear friends, we now come to the ceremony. As I said, 75 years of the Council of Europe. Age, some of you will agree with me, sometimes is not the most significant feature. In my view, when we talk about the Council of Europe, we should rather use the adjective revolutionary. It is a great pleasure for me to embark with you on a journey into the past to trace the history in the last 75 years during a few seconds. Let's see the video. Dear friends, dear colleagues, in order to have the history, we need to have symbols that deeply influence people. Symbols that give motivation. Symbols that uphold our values. This is why the Council of Europe, representing the new Europe, Europe born from the hope of European nations, decided to have its own symbols. Its flag, its day, and its anthem. The idea of the anthem took a long path. In 1971, the Parliamentary Assembly adopted the Ode to Joy in the fourth movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony to be the European anthem on the basis of this arrangement by an Austrian conductor, Herbert von Karajan. The arrangement for string instruments played today is by Jeff Manoukian, a somewhat longer arrangement of 4 minutes, conducted by our Austrian colleague and Speaker of the Austrian Parliament, the President of the National Council of Austria, Mr. Wolfgang Sobotka, whom I now invite to take the conductor's stand. President Sobotka, I believe that you are the only Speaker of Parliament who is a conductor, too. So thank you for accepting this invitation to participate in the opening ceremony of the hemicycle, which is dedicated to the 75th anniversary of the Council of Europe. And I would like now to ask you to take the floor.
Sehr geehrter Herr Präsident,
President, esteemed members of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, Secretary General, Deputy, it is indeed a great joy and honor for me to be able to be here present for the opening, once again, of this wonderful chamber, and also particularly on this particular day, celebrating 75 years of the Council of Europe. So, to be here in the cradle of this wonderful institution is a great experience indeed. After the horrors of the Second World War, for us to be able together, for our forefathers together, to strive for peace through the creation of an institution of this nature is absolutely key. There are numerous conventions which have been forged here in this chamber, which have been extremely important in order to create democracy in Europe. They have served as cornerstones, indeed. So, in the Parliamentary Assembly in the past and today has played an extremely important role as far as the defense of human rights, democracy, and rule of law. Peace is not something to be taken for granted. It requires a concerted effort, and we all must work together, strive together in order to build that peace. Every piece of it has to be worked on in order to create those necessary foundations, and that we've seen through our fathers, our forefathers, in creating that philosophy of democracy. When Churchill clearly said, indeed, that democracy is the worst form of leadership or form of institutional political structure that exists, but he didn't mean it in that particular way that people might have thought. In liberal democracy, welfare, and a market-based economy, of course, it leads to different problems of conflict, of a conflictual nature, and that it is for that reason why it is absolutely necessary to calibrate everything very carefully. But indeed, we have to look at all of those particular aspects which are key to our structure, our civilization, our culture. In other words, protecting those that are vulnerable and protecting all that need some sort of support, those that are marginalized as well. And indeed, democracy is the only structure, the only form within which that is possible. Unfortunately, there are many drawbacks today. We have 31 countries that have a positive democracy balance, as has been said, but 68 countries where there's a terrible deficit in democracy. And 7.8% of our population, of our world population today, live in liberal democratic systems where welfare indeed exists for all. So it's very important for us to remember this every day, to look at the various problems that exist on a quotidian basis and work together in order to forge this democracy of the future. There are scourges which must be fought. Anti-Semitism and the terrible events that we saw on the 7th and 8th of October indicate to us the various threats and problems that exist and the reverberations that exist not only for Europe but for the entire world when we have these types of terrible events. We have a major responsibility that we bear, and Austria, indeed, a particular responsibility to bear on this particular front in fighting these forms of racism. Parliamentarians have met together in Austria and throughout Europe as well in order to discuss these terrible events that took place and to see what sort of measures, what sort of steps can be taken in order to fight this scourge in the future as well. Also, the irredentist movements that exist right now, in other words, that claim by countries to lands and territories which pertain to other sovereign nations, another serious problem which has to be taken up right now. We live in a new digital environment. The digital environment, of course, has created numerous possibilities for our societies, but it also has provided for a number of very unfortunate developments. It is used by authoritarian regimes in order to infiltrate and undermine democratic structures. This hybrid form of attack which now exists with digital means, this is something that has to be understood, and we have to take this threat very seriously. Whether it come from Russia, from China, or other corners of the world, we have to be very, very careful because efforts are being made to undermine the democracy that we so cherish. Hate speech, another issue which has taken on numerous different dimensions and also mythical proportions as well. We need regulation right now. We need proper regulation of platforms, and we have to, at the same time, very carefully protect freedom of speech, but these types of threats have to be taken on board and understood as well. COVID. We saw, indeed, during the COVID pandemic that different sort of theories that are out there which have also served to undermine or unfortunately undermine our democracies, they have taken foot and taken root as well. Putin fights not against fascists, and Ukraine is an independent country, and it is not part of Russia. And it's absolutely clear that Putin is the aggressor, and our Ukrainian friends are the victims in this particular situation. We have to understand that what we're seeing right here also is something that has been reflected in the events with Hamas and Israel. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Israel is a state under rule of law. So indeed, we have to understand these realities, and it's important for democracies to work together, for solidarity to exist, for all to work in a concerted fashion, and it is only in this way that we'll be able to protect democracy, freedom, and human rights. Long live the Council of Europe and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Wolfgang. And now we'll give the floor for a brief intervention to the leaders of the 5 political groups, starting with Mr. Frank Sbabe on behalf of the Socialists, Greens and Democrats.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, thank you very much for this anthem. Maybe we should start all the sessions with such an anthem, because it reminds us who we are, where we are, and what we stand for. Because there are 700 million people, around 700 million people. Some of them don't even know what the Council of Europe is, but they trust in us. They trust in us and our values and our rules. And there are others who are waiting for us, that we come back to their countries, or we come to their countries to support them. We are at the crossroads. You mentioned it. We are at the crossroads where more and more countries have a tendency not just to want to win elections with a better program, with a better election campaign, but they want to stay in power forever. They come into power and then they start to have ideas, start experiments. They go to a kind of school for dictatorship to rebuild the country, to change everything, the composition, the constitution in the country with just one aim, to stay in power forever. But we should know 2 things. First thing is something that dictators should know. Dictators don't stay forever, and they end very often not in a very good mood. That's what we have to say to the dictators. And the second thing is that the price for this kind of authoritarianism, for this dictatorship, the people pay. Because at the end, if you don't have a liberal democracy, what will happen? you try to undermine the human rights in your own country, and you are aggressive towards other countries. This is a situation, and we should be aware. It's difficult. We come from different countries with different traditions, but I see this tendency into the wrong direction, and each of us has to decide if you, let's say, let's make your own government make power on you here, or if you are here to stand for the values and the rights of the organization, and I think we should be aware of it, and we should stand for the values of this 75 years old organization.
Thank you, Mr. Svabe. On behalf of the European People's Party, Mr. Davor-Ivo-Stier.
Yeah. 5 years of the Council of Europe is a big anniversary, and we should be proud of all our achievements, but we also should remember the historic context and to draw inspiration from that context to face the challenges that we have today. The Council of Europe was founded after the horrors of the Second World War, after National Socialism and Fascism were defeated, but also confronting the challenges posed at that time by the communist regimes in Eastern Europe and in particular by the Soviet Union. The Founding Fathers were convinced that the dignity of every human person is above the powers of the state, that the state cannot hide behind the concept of national sovereignty or behind any ideology in order to violate the dignity of the human person. Now, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, we thought that this concept, this democratic paradigm, will be accepted not only in our European continent but around the globe. But as Frank Schwabe said before, we are seeing now some backpedaling. We are seeing that autocratic regimes are posing a new challenge to our democratic paradigm, and we see that every day by the aggression launched by Vladimir Putin and today's Russia to Ukraine. So, for us, it's important that we face this challenge remaining faithful as EPP, as those that cherish the political doctrine of Christian democracy. We firmly believe that all persons are created equal and free. And it's by defending freedom of our societies, by defending the dignity of every human person, that we will confront the challenges posed today by the autocratic regimes. That's why we will continue to work for a Council of Europe that will be the soul of Europe, that will be the soul that defends democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stier. Dear colleagues, since all electronic equipment is brand new, I've been informed that we have to press the button only once, wait for a few seconds, and then everything miraculously will work. Now, I give the floor to Mr. Zsolt Nemet on behalf of the European Conservatives.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, Mr. President Sobotka, welcome in our circles, and your performance just a few seconds ago proves that we politicians are also made up of human beings. You are a musician as well, a very famous and respected artist in Austria, and at the same time you are the president of your country. We are very honored that you have accepted the invitation of us, and as you can see, we have got a very unique momentum celebrating the 75th anniversary of our organization and coming back to this chamber. And we have spent 1 year in another chamber. And dear colleagues, I think now all of us are convinced that our chamber is much nicer than the chamber of the European Parliament. And we were very glad to come back And this chamber and this music is in harmony. And I think that is what we need to move towards, a harmonious life in Europe. And that is what we are trying to serve in the Council of Europe. I am privileged to be a member of this organization with some breaks since 1993. Probably I am one of the oldest members of this assembly. And I would like to underline only one element in this discussion, that we have old and traditional values, as you were pointing at it, Mr. Sobotka, peace and democracy. I do agree with you. And today, this is actual again. Peace and democracy, human rights, the protection of national minorities, and so on. We need to reflect on contemporary challenges, but we should not abandon the original, the classical values our organization has been established for. Thank you very much for joining us at this occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nemeth. On behalf of the ALDE Group, Mr. Julian Boulay.
Dear colleagues, dear Speaker, we are not here to celebrate 75 years of the great values of this organization, because I think if we are to celebrate something, is our small achievements every day. And this organization started when a wall, a big iron wall, was to divide Europe. And now we are not very far away from that, despite progress, because we have a new iron wall dividing the civilized, value-based, democratic, rule-of-based Europe and the Russian aggression in Ukraine, which is a big wound in the body of this continent that we should be not allowing to happen. Of course, the European Convention of Human Rights is great. Of course, the court is great. But there are some things to be said in this assembly. For instance, creating majority in our own countries in not allowing 30 million Europeans be part of a zone of free movement of people. And these are Romanians and Bulgarians kept away from Schengen zone, from the majority that you, Mr. Sobotka, are leading in the Austrian Parliament. By a better directing and a better conducting the orchestra of the Austrian Parliament, you could be fighting yourself in order to create more rights, more liberty for 30 million of European people that strive to do that. So please, Mr. Sobotka, when going home, tell your Chancellor, Mr. Nehammer, to stop playing games and stop being cynical and allow the Romanians and Bulgarians to fully enjoy the European rights as you have enjoyed it in the past 60 years, 70 years, when you have enjoyed the right of freedom of movement. So, Mr. Sobotka, please tear down the wall of the Schengen zone that is keeping away the Romanians and Bulgarians from the fundamental liberties and freedoms of citizens of this continent and full members of Council of Europe and Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boulay. On behalf of the European United Left, Mr. Andrei Hungo. Just press it once, Andrei. Only one time, and it will come in a few minutes. So we are learning. According to the procedure, we have to have our card in. Yes.
No.
Geht es jetzt? Ja, wunderbar.
It works. Wonderful. Well, new technology. Thank you very much indeed, President. Colleagues, 75 years ago, the Council of Europe was founded. It was founded by 7 states after the appalling events of the Second World War. The Assembly at the time, I believe, was intended to be used to create a new European constitution. But the basis, of course, the bedrock of this is the European Convention of Human Rights. And the consequences of that, of course, have been the 200 further conventions that have been drafted. Now, I think the setup here, where we have sovereign states which can sign up to agreements and conventions and then look at just how they're being implemented and supervise them through the European Court of Human Rights or through other monitoring instruments. I think this is a very sustainable model that we have of European cooperation. We have a court which is a sort of supranational court and covers human rights, and it's unique in the world. And if you look at the past, of course, there have been very many developments. We no longer have 10 members, we have 46 members. I'd like to remind you of the fact that here in this very chamber, in June 1989, Mikhail Gorbachev addressed the chamber and spoke of the vision of the common European house. I know that we are quite far away now, or further away from this vision, as a result of the war and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But this vision that we heard in the 1990s, it could almost be reached then. It was palpable. Well, I think is something we should not overlook. We must continue to fight for this. And it's of crucial importance, I think, for the future as well of this organization, that judgments are handed down and enforced, and that the system of double standards in international politics is avoided. And I think with this in mind, this organization has a very important future. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Hunko. Dear colleagues, closing for the 75 years of our organization, let me go back to the symbols. We started talking about the anthem and the symbols, the flag and other symbols that we are united behind them. And in my opinion, there is a symbol unifying the whole humankind, coming from my home country, Greece, especially ancient Olympia, where the Olympic Games were born. And this symbol is the Olympic flame. This strong symbol of peace will pass through Strasbourg this coming Wednesday for the first time ever. The International Olympic Committee, upon my proposal, agreed that the Olympic flame will enter our renovated hemicycle. This will happen on Wednesday afternoon between 5:30 and 6:15, and I hope you will be all here. I wish to thank the International Olympic Committee, the French authorities, as well as the whole team within the Council of Europe who made this truly historic event to happen now, when we mark the important anniversary of our organization. I'm proceeding now. The next item on the agenda is the debate on the progress report of the Bureau and the Standing Committee, presented by Mrs. Elisabetta Gardini, in place of the rapporteur, Mr. Ian Liddell-Granger, who cannot be present today. This will be combined with consideration of the report of the ad hoc committee of the Bureau on the observation of the presidential and parliamentary elections in North Macedonia, presented by Mr. Alfred Herr. The debate must conclude by 12:30. I don't think that we will have conclude by 12:30, but I will try to do my best. Otherwise, we will continue in the afternoon. I call Ms. Gardini to present the progress report. You have 7 minutes.
I wait 2 seconds. Maybe it's 5 seconds. Okay. Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you very much. Now, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's with great pleasure to be able to present to you the activities of the Bureau and the Standing Committee of our Assembly from mid-June 2024. Now, I'm glad to be able to take the floor on this particular issue. On behalf of my colleague, and of course I'm very glad to be able to be in this newly renovated and refurbished wonderful chamber. Now, I won't go into all of the details of the report. I just wanted to underline some of the key issues. Two events, very important during this period. First of all, the activities of the Bureau and Standing Committee, the key issues. But first of all, I'd like to mention that the Standing Committee met on the 24th of May in Vilnius in 2024, and the opportunity exists to listen to the Lithuanian authorities as well, with a number of different statements, and I'd like to thank them for their hospitality as well, and discuss key issues of our political agenda as well with them. The Standing Committee had initial debate on the recent challenges to democracy in Georgia, and the adoption by the Georgian Parliament of the law on transparency and foreign agents. We discussed this particular issue in great detail. Shalva Bokwashvili, the president of the Georgian Parliament, and Madam Bikova from the Venice Commission were there as well to discuss these particular issues. Now, we just have decided to have an urgency debate on this particular issue of democracy in Georgia, and in our debate, we focused also on the 75 years of the Council of Europe and the issue of guaranteeing the participation of all Europeans in our organization's activities. More specifically, in the course of the debate, the increasing problem of loss of trust of European citizens in the institutions of democracy of our continent. And we felt it's necessary to create some sort of guide, some sort of roadmap, if you like, in order to find ways to have citizens involved in the various activities of the structure of the Council of Europe and other European institutions as well. It is our responsibility to find new ways in order to bring on board our citizens, to better understand our work, and to show that this particular organization what it does as far as human rights, democracy, and rule of law. We also had a discussion within the framework of the ad hoc committee of the Bureau on the issue of Belarusians in exile. Furthermore, ways to find a way that national parliaments can contribute to supporting these Belarusians in exile and the Belarusian government in exile as well. Also, in Geneva, at the headquarters of the Red Cross, there was a discussion of the situation that involves children in Ukraine and children that have been deported from Ukraine or have been taken to Russia. Priority has to be given by the Parliamentary Assembly to this particular issue. It's necessary to put together a parliamentary network as well in order to boost the effort, in order to have the return of these children and have a total blocking of all these types of activities that involve the deportation of children to Russia. During this particular period, there have been numerous different challenges, and this comes at this key moment, 75 years of the Council of Europe. 75 years ago, the continent was devastated by conflict. The relations that existed between the states in Europe, between the countries in Europe, totally different from what exists today. A landscape which is light years away from what we have right now. So the only way for there to exist prosperity and welfare for all is to put aside conflict and incorporate into our efforts dialogue, cooperation, working concertedly for the future as well. And it must be understood that we have here a joint task in which we all have to participate. This is the only way that we can boost the values that are ever so key for us: democracy, human rights, rule of law. These efforts that have been made over these years within the framework of the Council of Europe is something which serves as a beacon indeed for all. Unfortunately, today our continent has suffered terribly from conflicts, numerous challenges. Democracy is being undermined. Inequality is rampant now. So our effort has to be all the more so one of great intensity and within a spirit of cooperation. The work of the Council of Europe is as important today as it was 75 years ago. We have to understand that these efforts have to be brought together to create, to crystallize, to create all that is necessary for democracy, human rights, and rule of law. The efforts that were made through the summit in Reykjavik was indeed a key moment in this particular effort to bring everybody together. And it was of great pride indeed for us to see our prime ministers present, including my prime minister, Giorgia Meloni. So we have to understand that we must protect like the apple of our eye these very principles. And all of these principles, the key line of defense for all of these is the Council of Europe. I'd like to make reference to an issue that has been key to all of us right now, for all of us that are in the European Union. That is to say, on the 9th of June, we saw a key moment of the exercising of democracy. Our citizens have expressed themselves on numerous different fronts, bringing together all citizens of Europe, particularly those that are marginalized, young people, women as well, working together in order to understand that it is once again only through cooperation that we can achieve major things. The opportunities are there, and the cooperation that exists between our institutions, for example, the cooperation between the Council of Europe, our Parliamentary Assembly, and the European Parliament, right here in Strasbourg, this ought to serve as a kind of cornerstone, if you like, to that cooperation which will exist in the future between all institutions. So, once again, it is only through working once again together that we will be able to achieve and to realize our joint agenda. Unfortunately, I was not able to present to you all of the details of the written report, but at this point I'll end and thank you very, very much for your attention. I guess she's from Meloni's party.
Yeah, well, if she's in the Conservatives group, she must be, yeah. She was speaking at a feral pace.
Yeah.
They found new obstacles, Bulgaria rejecting their adhesion to the European Union, and this of course was a main topic during the election campaign. The election itself was organized very well. We didn't find major issues. The rhetoric was, however, a bit harsh, we have to say this, but despite this fact, the voter turnout was quiet and it was fairly done. We have various recommendations by the Venice Commissions, what could be improved also in the future. Among this is to eliminate the 40% voter turnout requirement for the second round of the presidential elections, then to update and audit the residential address system and civil registration and deal with the persistent shortcomings which diminishes the accuracy of the voters list. And also, of course, there are many people from North Macedonia living abroad who were not able to cast their vote. This also brings a room for improvement. Corruption, of course, and voter buying is always a theme, and I think we have the monitoring committee that should make a follow-up on these questions. Also, the legal system of addressing complaints regarding all steps of the electoral process in order to increase general trust in the judiciary system should be ensured, and ensure a better observation of the procedure by the members of the election boards, particularly during the vote counting, and further develop the training of the electoral administration. But as mentioned before, all in all, it was a decent election, it was a fair election, it was a free election, and women participation was there, but they are still room for improvement also for women's rights. But at least we have now a women president with Mrs. Gordana, who won the election, and she was a former member of the Venice Commission of the Council of Europe. So I think we have someone now as a president who will share the values of the Council of Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The debate will continue this afternoon at 4 p.m. when we will resume with the spokespersons of political groups, and we go now to the Vigdis Prize award ceremony. I'm honored to open together with you this very first award ceremony for the Vigdis Prize for Women's Empowerment. But first, I would like to turn and look at the camera. And I'm looking at the camera because on the other side, I know that there is a woman who was the inspiration for this award and who is watching at this very moment from her home in Reykjavik. I would like all of us to give an applause to Vigdis Finnbogadóttir, the world's first democratically elected female president. Kæri Vigdis, góðan dag. Thank you, Vigdis. Thank you for your visionary leadership, courage, and enduring legacy. You have shown us the path to a brighter, more inclusive future. Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, this prize, which promotes gender equality by rewarding the incredible people who take initiatives to empower women, is a result of the Reykjavik Summit and the cooperation between our Assembly and the Government of Iceland. I'm very happy that the President of Iceland and the Icelandic Minister of Social Affairs and Labour Market have taken the time to participate in this ceremony. Without further ado, it is my pleasure now to invite the President of Iceland to come to the rostrum and take the floor. Mr. President, you have the floor.
Dear Chairman, dear friends, Excellencies, everyone, I'll say a few words in Icelandic also. Kæra Vigdis, gaman að þú getur verið með okkur á þessari stundu, þinn heiðurinn. Can a woman be president? Can a single mother be president? Can a single divorced mother be president? In 1980, in Iceland, my home country, my fellow citizens, some of them at least, were asking themselves these very questions. We had a presidential election. 4 candidates, 1 woman, for the first time in Iceland. And these questions were raised. The answers to all of them turned out to be a resounding yes. Yes, she can And yes, she did. For 16 years, Vigdis Finnbogadóttir served us as president in an amazing manner. And she was asked also during the campaign, should we elect you because you're a woman? And then the answer was a resounding no. You should just elect me because I'm a human being. If you want to. In a free democratic society, we should have a level playing field where everybody can run for office, where everybody can show themselves and others what they're capable of. And this, as I said, Vigdis did. She was a role model. She was a path breaker. As the chairman mentioned, we in Iceland had the good fortune of electing the first woman as head of state. A role model, a path breaker. But while we need role models and while we need path breakers, we, more than that, need models that work and paths where we can all travel together. So yes, this award is an award to Vigdis in her name, in honor and recognition of her service, of her career as a role model, but it is also an encouragement for others. And we have here representatives or those who have been nominated for this prestigious prize. Good luck with your work. I have no idea who will get the prize. I look forward to seeing it. But all those who were nominated as well, all those women, all those groups who are doing an amazing work, we are in awe, we admire you. Now, I stand here as a man. Women's rights, gender equality, these are not only issues that concern a certain part of society. It concerns us all, because gender equality is not only a human rights issue. It's not only women's issue. It concerns us all. And if it's not enough for you to think it is the right thing to do, it is the honorable thing to do, to campaign for full gender equality, add this. Use this argument to those who say, this is not something that we should be so much concerned about. It benefits us all. In an equal society, in a society where we respect equal rights for all, everybody benefits, practically, economically. We all become richer. Shouldn't that be something that should reach the ears and minds of everyone? So with that in mind, I am honored as an Icelander, but just as a global citizen, to see this award as a recognition of a job well done and as an encouragement to others to follow in the footsteps of our beloved Vigdis Finnbogadóttir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Johansson. Dear colleagues, we would like now to show all present a video on the Vigdis Prize for Women's Empowerment.
Má þá ekki orða það sem svo að þú eigir að það er að kjósa þig af því að þú sért kona?
Nei, þá ekki að kjósa mig af því ég er kona. Þá að kjósa mig af því að ég er maður.
29 June 1980. The world watches in surprise and admiration as the citizens of a small country in the far north of Europe elect a woman as head of state for the first time in history.
Mér líður svolítið einkennilega, ég verð að játa það. Þetta hefur verið sérkennileg nótt og já, þetta var svona dálítið lengi að ráðast hvernig myndi fara.
The next day, a huge crowd gathers to cheer Vigdis Finnbogadóttir, the new president of Iceland. Icelandic politics have changed forever, and an inspiring new page in world history has been written. In 1974, men made up 96% of all local government representatives. But Icelandic women were beginning to demand a greater say in politics. On United Nations Day, the 24th of October 1975, tens of thousands of women stopped work and marched for gender equality. For the first time, the struggle of Icelandic women for equality grabbed the world's attention. The face of Icelandic politics was changed by Vigdis's run for president and subsequent election. Political parties in Iceland realised that women had heaps of votes and that they dared, could and wanted to take an active part in politics. It was a sea change. After she took office, women stood for election more frequently, and the number of elected women increased. Vigdis was re-elected, unopposed, in 1984. She oversaw the Reykjavik summit on the 11th and 12th of October 1986 between American President Ronald Reagan and Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev, which is credited with improving relations between the superpowers and helping to bring the Cold War to an end.
Madam President, your country, Iceland, boasts a history that includes a Republican Constitution and an assembly as far back as the year 930. Now that's going back pretty far, even by my way of counting.
During Vigdis's presidency, Iceland's relations with the outside world flourished, mostly in the areas of education, culture and science. As an active and engaged head of state, she represented the nation abroad and shaped national identity through culture at home. In a memorable speech to the Parliamentary Assembly in Strasbourg in 1991, the Icelandic president pleaded for diversity in Europe and mostly for the fight against prejudice.
Diversity is the great strength of the European heritage, and we must foster this quality and never allow it to divide us. The fight against prejudice is a movement towards peace.
30 years after that speech, in May 2023, ahead of the Reykjavik summit, the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly and the Government of Iceland launched the Vigdis Prize for Women's Empowerment. The €60,000 annual prize rewards outstanding initiatives which promote the empowerment of women in all their diversity, with a broad remit covering achievements in gender equality or equal access to participation and decision-making. For the first ever edition of the award, the shortlisted are Feminotica Foundation, Poland. The main area of Feminotica's activities is to support women survivors of gender-based violence. The organisation operates a helpline for women in such a situation, offering legal and psychological, therapeutic or other support adapted to the needs of the victim. Irida Women's Centre, Greece. The centre is a grassroots NGO working to make positive change in the lives of women experiencing poverty, social exclusion and gender-based violence. Irida began its activities during the migration crisis in 2016, creating safe spaces for women and children from over 50 countries. Pascuala López López, Mexico. A human rights defender from Chiapas, her work has been put at risk by the actions of an armed group that operates in her town. Following the murder of her son, she works for transformation of the lives of indigenous women and to ensure equal access to justice and political participation. 4 decades ago, the election of a 50-year-old, divorced, working single mother and her unprecedented 16-year term in office gave an entire generation of Icelanders the gift of a giant step towards equality. Today, the Vigdis Prize seeks to pay tribute to an iconic president, a courageous woman and an inspiring human being.
Ég held að það besta sem að forseti getur óskað sér ef hann getur fengið þjóðina til þess að þykja eilítið vænt sig.
I would now like to invite the Minister of Social Affairs and Labour Market to come to the rostrum. Minister Gudbrandsson, the floor is yours.
His Excellency, President of Iceland, President of the Assembly, Secretary General, distinguished members of Parliament, ambassadors, dear guests, and dear Madam Vigdis. Iceland held the presidency of the Council of Europe last year until May 2023. During our presidency, we hosted the Reykjavik Summit, where the Council of Europe head of states were invited and resulted in the Reykjavik Declaration being adopted. During the presidency, one of Iceland's priority topics was equality. To accentuate that, Iceland's government decided in the weeks leading up to the Reykjavik Summit to establish a new international gender equality prize in partnership with the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, the Vigdis Prize for Women's Empowerment. The prize will be awarded annually for an outstanding action and contributions to the empowerment of women. But why Vigdis Prize for Women's Empowerment? Well, we actually saw that here on the screen before, but let me reflect upon it a little bit myself. Madam Vigdis Finnbogadóttir was the first woman worldwide to be elected as head of state in a democratic state back in 1980. I was only 3 years old at that time, and I must admit that I do not remember the election day. But that turned out to be a big day in our history, a turning point. Those of us who grew up having Vigdis as our president, I think we all have some personal stories that we can relate to her. And here is mine. I grew up on a farm with a lot of animals, and it's customary in the countryside to name animals after public figures. So when Vigdis was elected, 3 baby horses were born at my farm. One of them a mare, a female horse, and of course he was named Vigdis, but always called Vigga, which is a short for Vigdis. And for a very long time, I thought our president was actually called Vigga. She was not. I found out later. And oh my, what a fierce and powerful horse. That horse jumped over fences, had a mind of her own, and was very assertive. Very much like women who have had to fight for their place and for basic human rights. For a little boy who did neither understand politics nor feminism, the most powerful horse was female, and it was named after the president. My generation grew up having a female president, and that was the right thing, and that was the norm. The election of Vigdis was a game changer in Iceland when it comes to gender equality, both in politics as well as socially. Her election as the first woman elected head of state was unique and had a snowball effect of encouraging more and more women to become active in political life. We had a role model in the highest position. And in my mind, it is important that little girls see that a president can be a woman. It is important, similarly, for a LGBTI plus kid, a child in a wheelchair, or kids of immigrants to see themselves in a powerful positions. Role models are important for creating a fairer and more just societies where everyone can belong. Vigdis Finnbogadóttir is a national treasure in Iceland. She had the greatest influence on gender equality in our history. It is therefore very fitting that the Prize for Women's Empowerment is named after Vigdis and to pay her a tribute. Dear guests, the aim of the Vigdis Prize is to reward outstanding initiatives promoting the empowerment of women in all their diversity. Now, it has been estimated that if we continue on the same speed, it will actually take us 300 years to reach full gender equality. And that is something that is absolutely unacceptable. Iceland has sometimes been called a champion of gender equality, yet let's not forget that full gender equality has not been reached, not in Iceland and not around the world. However, today we celebrate. Today we feel proud. Tomorrow we continue the fight. Thank you.
Dear President, Minister candidates, members of the panel, colleagues and friends. I should like to begin my address by quoting the Icelandic poet Hulda, whose words are written at the entrance of the museum dedicated to Vigdis in Reykjavik. Mother Grey Goose, lend me wings, so that I may fly south across the sea. This poem may be read as an exhortation for young women to explore the world and make an impact on it precisely as Vigdis did all her life. I should like to express my heartfelt thanks to the Republic of Iceland, eminently represented today by its President and Minister of Social Affairs and Labour Market. Thank you for having taken up this idea with enthusiasm and for agreeing to lend the name and spirit of the first woman elected president of your country, and indeed of the world, Vigdis Finnbogadóttir, to the prize. My sincere thanks to the Icelandic government for providing the 60,000 euro prize money and for bringing a very beautiful and symbolic work of art to the Council of Europe. The trophy is named Kvika. Did I pronounce it well? Yes. Kvika. As the President informed us earlier, it is magma. Magma is a mixture of earth, of lava, of sand, and symbolizes strength, resilience, and adaptability. It will stay in Strasbourg as a reminder of what we aim to achieve this prize. The winner will receive a framed picture of the trophy. The second and the third will receive a diploma. I would like to congratulate all 123 candidates for the first edition of the prize. The stories told by their sponsors in their applications are truly inspiring, and it was really difficult to make a choice among all these moving examples. Of course, very special congratulations to the three shortlisted candidates here with us today. The Feminoteka Foundation from Poland. The Irida Women's Center from Greece. Mrs. Pascuala Lopez Lopez from Mexico. You all deserve to be here today, and you all have our deepest admiration for your work, your courage, and resilience. My thanks also to the selection panel. The selection panel is sitting on the second row, for your thorough and thoughtful examination of the nominations, for the stimulating discussions we had in Reykjavik and in Strasbourg, for your convictions and your clear positions. Thank you to our dear Secretary General Despina Hadjivasiliou Tsouvilis, without whose determination and positive thinking this prize would not exist. I have the honor, as you witnessed, to sit between two Secretary Generals, the Secretary General of our organization, Maria Pecinovic-Buric, and Despina Hadjivasiliou Tsouvilis. And it is a real honor, and it is actually these two women who are presenting the meaning of being a woman who is trying hard in her life. They are both role models for the Council of Europe and for all of us. Dear Maria, dear Despina, thank you so much. And now, it will not take long like the Oscar Awards. It is my great honor to announce the winner of the prize. The Irida Women's Center from Greece. Congratulations.
Dear all, first of all, I would like to tell you to excuse my voice if it's shaking. It's because I'm very happy. Thank you so much. It is with immense gratitude and a profound sense of honor that I stand before you today to accept this prize that's named after the first democratically elected female president, Madam Vigdis Prize, representing our organization, Irida Women's Center, and our founder and CEO, Ms. Chloe Elizabeth Kusula. This recognition is a testament to our efforts and a powerful affirmation of women's collective strength and resilience everywhere. In this context, I'd like to express my honest admiration towards the two fellow candidates, Feminoteca Foundation and Madame Pascuala Lopez Lopez, for their outstanding work catalyzing a meaningful positive change in women's lives. I'd like also to extend our gratitude to the Council of Europe and the esteemed judging committee for recognizing our work. Your recognition fuels our passion and devotion to continue fighting and advocating for women's rights, equality, and empowerment. This honorable recognition of our work is the outcome of the persistence, commitment, and dedication of our incredible team, having unconditional faith in our vision to leave no woman behind. Every accomplishment, every initiative, and every step forward is a direct outcome of their hard work and tireless effort. It's a team of extraordinary women. We are also beyond grateful to our donors, partners, and supporters. Your belief in our vision and your generous contribution make our work possible. Together, we are building a foundation for future generations where gender equality is not just an aspiration, but a reality. To the women we serve and support, we want to say that you are the true heroes of this journey. Your stories, courage, and resilience are a daily source of inspiration. Data for 2023 in the European Union on gender equality ranks Greece 24th among the EU member states with a score of 58 out of 100, demonstrating that there is still much to be done in this direction. Greece used to hold the last place in gender equality with a score remaining static almost more than a decade. Since 2020, Greece's overall score has increased by 4.6 points, which is one of the fastest paces of progress among the member states. We applaud the positive steps, but we do not overlook the immense shortcomings. More than 1 in 4 women in Greece live at risk of poverty and social exclusion. 4 in 10 women experience physical, psychological, or sexual gender-based violence at least once in their adulthood. 8 femicides have taken place within the first semester of the year. Yet, the term femicide is not legally recognized within our country. Poverty and social exclusion can be both a cause and a consequence of gender-based violence. Violence has a tremendous impact not only on the lives of women who experience it, but on society as a whole. It impoverishes women, their families, communities, and nations. Since 2018, IRIDA has been operating the first and sole safe community center for all women and their children, regardless of their nationality, ethnicity, or legal status in northern Greece. We established an innovative and unique women-led space in which the most vulnerable women receiving individualized services to become empowered and pursue opportunities for personal and professional growth. Our provisions and services are shaped by a holistic approach in order to protect, empower, and support the most vulnerable women to access their fundamental rights that most of the times they are deprived of because of their gender. Through our Interelect programs, the Protection Program and the Livelihood Program, our members are supported with casework, legal assistance, court representation, psychological and psychosocial support, skill building and employability services. We work to eliminate the barriers that hinder women's overall well-being while empowering them to make informed decisions and regain ownership of their lives. We must continue addressing and advocating for the systemic issues that contribute to poverty, social exclusion, and gender-based violence, ensuring that all women live a dignified and safe life and pursue opportunities for personal and professional growth. Therefore, on behalf of our organization, we would like to thank you for this recognition, a reminder of how far we've come and an ongoing call to action for the work that still lies ahead. We will continue to fight for a world where every woman is empowered to achieve her full potential, a world where no woman is left behind. Thank you very much.
Now I congratulate the two other shortlisted candidates who I call now to the rostrum to receive their diplomas. And now, if you want to say a few words, you are very welcomed. Just for a minute. We don't have much time left. So.
Microphone. Thank you so much. It's a huge honor to be here at the Vigdis Prize for Women's Empowerment award ceremony. It's a huge honor to be shortlisted. This award is very much needed to complement women's efforts for equality and safety. With Feminoteka Foundation, we have been helping women who experience violence for over 18 years, and we know that this sort of service, this help is still needed. For many years, we have also been helping women without any support of our government, and we will continue to do so. We will continue to help women no matter what. And the fact that we are here today for us is a reinforcement of the fact that we are doing the right thing. We have chosen the right path. Thank you so much.
Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me. I am here before you, honorable individuals. Thank you very much, first of all. I will continue with the work that I am doing, with my struggle. I will continue for the rights of women to be respected. I'll continue with this work, and I'd like to thank you all, first of all, and pay homage to Madam Vigdis as well, and to the work that she has done. We will continue with our struggle, and we will continue to be at the side of women who are struggling in our country. Thank you very much.
So, thank you. I would like now to invite the Secretary General of our organization, the Secretary General of the Assembly, the Deputy Secretary General, President of Iceland, Minister of Iceland, Ambassador of Iceland, Chairpace Icelandic Delegation, Chairpace Equality Committee, and members of the panel to join us up here for a group picture. Here in front. Okay, let's go. Let's go here.
No, on a DC. On a DC. No, 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 no. Please, please. Because otherwise we don't see this. Okay, so Mr. President, next. The winner, please. The winner, please.
And this concludes the first part of our session, but I warmly welcome you to come to the opening of the exhibition, 75 Women in 75 Years of Council of Europe History, which will take place now, right outside our hemicycle. Thank you all.